what are the limitations of AI and what can we do that AI can't? And that is, you can't build a campfire and it can't have an outdoor dinner. You can't build a front porch. You can't think about the tenants. I think there's a huge inflection point going on with the market and what they want. And I think with it reflects on what kind of homes they were buying and the stock we have in the current market is not there. So people do want smaller scale. The kind of vacations they're taking now, they don't want to go spend, $20,000 with Disney cruises. And there's a lot of people that really are focused on their wellness and mental and physical wellness. So they're willing to spend a lot of money. So like the whole hospitality market is shifting and there's numbers are really alarming in a good way. The money is shifting to the hospitality front at alarming rates from a wellness perspective and what they're spending on it. So if you can get on a track that focuses on things that AI can't do, I think there's opportunity. I think that's the track we're trying to run on right now.
Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions podcast, where we dive into real conversations with business owners, innovators, and industry leaders reshaping the future of clean tech, construction, and the renewable energy sector. I'm Kreel Hutchinson, your host. Our guest today is Mark Turner, the owner of GreenSpur in the Falls Church, Virginia area. We'll be discussing his radical rethinking of what sustainability actually means in the built environment and why the era of greenwashing is over. Mark reveals why world's most forward-thinking hospitality and wellness projects are no longer just about energy efficiency, but about designing spaces that engage all five senses and reconnect people to simplicity, nature, and what it means to truly feel well. If you're a hospitality developer, design professional, or a commercial real estate leader focused on sustainability, you're going to love this show because Mark is rewriting the blueprint of what high-performance sustainability design actually looks like, and it's not what you think. It's an example of what happens when a lean, deeply experienced firm designs for the whole human experience and outpaces the big players without losing its soul. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thank you. That was a very generous introduction.
Well, let's have some fun. When we initially chatted off air and I checked out your website and heard all the great things you're doing, I was really excited to share this with my audience. So for people who may not know you and the work that you do in the world, why don't you give yourself a little bit of an introduction and a background?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I was born and raised in Jackson Hole, Wyoming on a family dude ranch, celebrating its 100th birthday this year. We've been there for 5 generations, so it was a blessed, filled growing up of building forts in the woods and fishing and hunting with my cousins and brothers and sisters. We didn't have a TV growing up, so I spent a lot of my time in nature just messing around and building stuff. And I went off to college and got an MBA, started in the development world and the commercial development side, and learned a lot. Got my teeth kicked in a little bit, understood how the program works. Started my firm GreenSpur about 20 years ago, and we wanted to focus on boutique projects. So we started as a construction company actually that does green building. And then we morphed into an architecture firm. We're mostly architecture now. We do some building, but we kind of grew up with our boots in the mud and sawdust. And so we know our way around a construction site a little bit commercially. And so we like boutique, intimate. We get really good craftsmen that work for us that are still designers that can know our way around a tool shed. And then we started a whiskey company 8 years ago called Lost Whiskey. So we have architecture and whiskey are 2 main tracks we're running on. So does that work?
That totally works. Hey, so I've always heard, and having done some construction myself, that the best architects are the ones that actually have built stuff themselves on construction sites in the past. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good architects in the world and past and present. I think taking the ethereal and making it practical from a sustainability, but also a fungibility, economic, sustainability, all those things have to play together. And to do that, you have to know how things get put together. You have to know how to draw how things put together. And I think more and more importantly is how you communicate with the craftsman himself. And I feel like sometimes architectures are kind of elitist and have a little bit of they wear scarves at their job site and they don't talk the language of the builders. And I sometimes, some of the good ones do, but if you're able to tap into the energy of the builders themselves and the craftsmanship, and you can understand what it takes to actually build these things, a lot of early mornings and, laborious kind of stuff, but true craftsmen, I have a deep appreciation for. So we like to be on job sites. We love the blue collar worker, the person that's actually putting it together. We like to communicate with them. We think we're good at that. It's one of our gifts because we grew up in that world. Yeah, we're unlike a lot of architectures because we don't come across as the dodgy ones that sometimes you meet. At least we think so.
You mentioned yourself as being, nowadays it's more of a boutique, almost a Western style feel. What does that look like and feel like to you? Share a little bit of an insight to the audience.
What do you mean, the boutique?
Yeah, what does that boutique mean to you?
Well, it means a lot. I think scale is something I really value. And I think Europe got scale better because they had to build in smaller acreages and they had tighter roads and just there's not enough land. I think America got lazy because we have so much land and we could do these chip subdivisions. So we built scale and we got out of scale. So you never see your kids. They're up in the room all night. You park your car in the garage. You don't talk to your neighbors. You have an 8,000 square foot house, but you're not real happy and you got a TV and it just became very isolated. So I think we kind of got off the rails from a scale perspective and the way we did urban sprawl. And I think there's kind of a subconscious backlash to people that want something in scale. They want smaller homes. It's kind of the tiny home movement, although it maybe took it too far. But people are much happier. And I think that the numbers and the metrics on Gen Z and Gen X and stuff, they prefer smaller boutique quality. They want to talk to their neighbors. I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down here, but it's a long way of saying, I think the boutique, if done right, it feels right. And you know that. And I think if we've all lived in larger houses or been in kind of ostentatious buildings, you kind of feel that it doesn't make you feel great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Bigger doesn't always feel better. It needs to feel like a home, right? So square footage doesn't build that in. It's a feeling. It's the environment. It's walking into a space and feeling relaxed, at a cellular level. Probably part of the entire feel that you guys are trying to accomplish in each one of your designs. I'd love to get your take a little bit more on where sustainability is these days when it comes to like building, residential and commercial, like the projects that you get involved with. What's your vision of sustainability? What's that communication with with your clients?
So we definitely went through a green building trend, green leads and all this stuff. It was very de jour. There was a lot of government programs that kind of encouraged those kind of things. There was a lot of tax credits for geothermal and solar panels. And that was good because it got people aware and there was kind of a green badge you'd wear on your shoulder that you were green. So if you made a house had solar panels on it and did geothermal, you felt good about yourself. If you had a lead home, you could brand that as your product, as a lead product or a lead commercial business. A lot of it was bullshit. The technology and the actual carbon footprint and the cost of such programs. I helped with the solar decathlon down in Washington, D.C. with Catholic University. I was one of the consultants on it. And they covered their entire structure with solar panels. And it put out a lot of power, but it didn't work, obviously, at night. It looked terrible. Like no one would ever want to live in a house like that. And the cost was like $3,000 a square foot. This was like 20 years ago or 15. So there's no sustainability to a model like that. No one wants to live there and no one can afford that. So you have to bridge the gap with practicality. McKinsey did a study that the number one way to reduce carbon is put better insulation in your house. It's not rocket science. That's the number one way you can curb carbon. Insulate your house better. So we focus on insulation, some of the low hanging fruit. But you can do a lot with scale too. If you build a 10,000 square foot house and you got solar and geothermal, you're great, but you have a huge footprint. Scale ties back into that equation and building, appropriate size structures for their thing. Yeah, I think the model's changed a lot. I think a lot of the tax credits have kind of gone away. I think a lot of people don't want to live in really modern solar covered houses. I think sustainability has, I want to say, more bone marrow to it because people really want a good shared meal. They want some connection to nature. They want to be able to talk to their kids. They want a house that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. So materials that this house we're in right now is all concrete and steel, but it's got a lot of warmth to it and wood. So it feels warm, but there's hardly any maintenance because we use products and materials that will wear well over time. And I think that's part of sustainability. The big thing for us is this soul factor. And a structure should feel like it has a soul and a connection to some kind of history or vernacular of architecture that people can kind of calm themselves with. So I don't know. That's a loaded answer, and I apologize for going on.
No, I love it. There's so many tangents there that we could go off. I'm curious to hear as put this version of you and what you guys do at GreenSpur and sustainability and have this conversation out in the world. Who resonates with the message? Who leans in and wants to work with you and being like, hey, that's exactly the language that we want to hear. That's where the direction we want to go in. Who's your clientele made up of?
It's a good question. It's changing. We're not your typical firm. So if you're building a big mass development and your main concern is a return on investment, and you just want to crank out cookie cutter kind of stuff, we're not that kind of firm. We've done some large homes that we're proud of, and we dabble in that some. But we've really just shifted to more of a hospitality model. And I think the people that gravitate towards us want project with a soul. So the first thing we do when a client calls us is we research on the history of where that place is located. So it may have been a place where milk barns are really prevalent. Maybe there's a milk barn on the thing, but we do a deep dive on the research on what was there before. And then we look at black and white pictures, and then we tie a brand to the projects. Every project we do has its own brand and kind of soul. And then we build all the tether points from there. So there's a rudder on the project that kind of steers all of our big decisions. And so when you see the final version, it may look modern or have different twists to it, but it's connected to a brand and a soul that was maybe already there. And it really helps influence the client. And if you're in a hospitality or if you have a commercial enterprise, then that brand kind of carries itself through. And it's not just like slapped on at the end of the project. So we brand initially, and then we design towards that ethos, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's a great concept. It seems like the right way to do it. When you're for the audience to get a really good scope of like the size of your business. So how many people do you have involved at GreenSpur? What's the size of the projects that you're doing? You've been doing this a long time. Where are you guys at?
We have 8 to 10 people in house that we work with, or like on payroll. We have a ton of consultants we work with. So we punch a little bigger than our weight because we're able to use a lot of consultants with our local markets. We've worked in over 20 states now. So we'll work with our client to come up with the big strokes and the big moves and the branding and the architecture. And then we'll hire local consultants, mainly engineers, civil engineers, structural engineers that'll work underneath us so we can punch above our weight. But now with virtual, technology, we can do things across the country virtually that's you couldn't do, 15 years ago. So it helps a small firm chase big projects because we can perform and compete with the larger project, just because, and even AI has had a big impact on, small firms and how they can produce things. So changing.
Do you want to mention any of those projects that you're really proud of or that were really like signature pieces from you guys? You want to share any with the audience?
God, yeah, we have several that we're proud of. A lot of them we're proud of. We did a pocket community down in Arkansas that got a lot of press called the Black Apple. We did with the Walton family. They had 1 acre of property and we put 10 small homes on it with like a really cool modern corn crib. Got a lot of attention, but these homes were 700 square feet to 1,500 at the most. And they were kind of around a courtyard and a lot of front porches. And the cool part about the project, we did it about 9 years ago. 8 or 9. And I went down there looking at another project in Arkansas, and I went and toured the site and just talked to people that were living there. And it's just to see their joy of how much they love living there. And there's a wait list to get on these things. And it's a boutique project, but they love their neighbors. They all knew each other, kind of a shared parking and storage area. So in our mind, the way we wanted that project to work out, 8 years later, coming back and actually talking with the tenants was rewarding because it kind of exceeded our expectations and kind of had they maintained its soul. This corn crib structure was surrounded by mirrors, so it reflected the nature. And so every Sunday they would get together and then the whole community would get there and cook burgers and have a couple beers and stuff. And that made our hearts sing because I think we've gotten away from that. Pre-World War II, our zoning kind of had this middle density zoning where we'd build smaller homes on smaller lots, and it was kind of these cottage-like developments. And then zoning either said want to do huge houses or we're going to do really dense, like urban things. And so we kind of lost our way from a zoning perspective, and you're starting to see it come back. But so that was one. We just broke ground on a big project for affordable housing, kind of a similar pocket community in Jackson Hole yesterday that we're excited about. We're doing a bunch of wellness projects here in Virginia. We're part of a project called Simply Shenandoah. It's, I think, one of the most forward-thinking wellness resorts, I would say, in the country right now. Very forward-thinking. Some top-name people are involved. We're part of that team, which is really exciting. Yeah, we're doing some stuff down in Florida, and we got a really neat project in Kentucky with whiskey and kind of an old farm that was a Kentucky Derby farm. So yeah, we're just kind of all over the map, but we're
Hey, I
enjoying it.
love it. Yeah, it sounds like a good full pipeline. So how does your marketing work? How do these kind of clients find you, reach out? How does those communications launch?
We're not a big firm, so we don't need to feed a lot of people. So we don't do any outreach or marketing. Luckily, if you're covered a lot in publications in our world, it plays well. So we've been in, Garden and Gun and Beautiful Home and House Beautiful and Architect Magazine. We've been in a lot of them, and a lot of them have been cover articles. So that helps us build our brand because people read about us and they contact us. We have a lot of repeat clients and referrals, but we don't do any marketing just because we want to keep it a relatively small firm and just do work that we're attached to and we're not pawning off to a bunch of plebes.
Great. So then you're kind of happy with the growth of your company and where it is stable. It's like this is the business that you want.
Yeah, I work for large companies and there's some value to that. There's a lot of pressure, and I feel like the bigger the company gets, the less intimate you can get with the projects. And that was why I kind of started this firm to begin with, because I was on that track with big firms and we were doing $300 million a year in construction. That's a meat grinder. And you lose touch with the actual sawdust. At least for me, that's what happened.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. What trends in the industry are you seeing that are working in your favor or having an influence on the projects and the clients that are showing up and wanting to engage in conversations?
The building industry and design is much a lag industry. We don't learn very well. It's not much of an open source kind of model. A lot of the code stuff has gotten really ridiculous. So I think a lot of these jurisdictions have overshot the code book went from this when I started, and now it's like, 3 or 4 inches thick. It's hard to innovate in this industry because the code has been so restrictive, and I think it onerous to get permits and stuff. So I think that's one of the big headwinds that I think everyone's facing. I think interest rates and this war going on in Iran is really going to impact commodity pricing in Q3 and Q4. We haven't seen it yet, really, but it's definitely coming down the train where you're going to see huge spikes because they haven't readjusted the pricing on all the commodity stuff, sheet goods and that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be a big sober reality in Q3 and Q4. I think AI is a big threat to some of these big firms because you can do a lot less with more, you can do a lot more with less people. So I think trying to find a job out of college is going to be tougher for young architects and stuff. And I think immigration, whatever side you decide on, a lot of our labor pool is immigrants, and a lot of them, unfortunately, are getting sent back, and maybe some rightly so or wrongfully so. But that is a labor pool that is it's twofold. You get a lot of older trades, like a lot of the plumbers and kind of the tradesmen were older white guys that kind of took a craft and they were mentors and stuff, and they're dying off or leaving the industry, and there's no real backfill of labor support. I mean, there is, but it's, every building in America has pipes and wires and they all need work. And we just don't have the bandwidth on the trades that we did, 40 years ago. That's a big issue. So I'm trying to paint a bleak story here, but there are some big headwinds I think that our industry faces.
Well, I ask someone like you because you've been in the industry so long and you've had so many experiences and hats within the industry. So you're a good person to kind of see what's on the wall because you've been probably through several economic growth and bust periods. And you can see like, oh, if this starts to happen, what's 6 months from here. So I think a lot of those are big conversations, obviously, but there's great insights that you've already presented there. One thing you mentioned I want to go a little deeper on is AI. And, humanity is going through this AI revolution and it's affecting everybody's business at some level and life. I'm curious, how has AI adoption in your business, how has that affected projects, your scope of work, what you're able to do? Give us a little bit inside baseball there.
Yeah, it's really, I would say, helped our business in some ways. Before, to do renderings or high quality graphics, you used to have to farm that out to firms in India, and you'd do it overnight, and they would kind of grind all night, and you'd get an image the next day, and you'd pay $400 or $500 per image. We can do all that through AI, and we can do it in seconds. So we can plug in the inputs, and in seconds we get an output that's remarkably good and getting better. The graphics, the artistic graphics have gone really well, and I think it's going to wane itself into the actual technical drawings. It's not quite there yet, but I think it's going to help with that too. But that being said, we asked this question many times in our firm is what are the limitations of AI and what can we do that AI can't? And that is, you can't build a campfire and it can't have an outdoor dinner. It can't build a front porch. It can't think about the tenants that I think there's a huge inflection point going on with the market and what they want. And I think it reflects on the kind of homes they were buying and the stock we have in the current market is not there. So people do want smaller scale. The kind of vacations they're taking now, they don't want to go spend, $20,000 with Disney cruises. I mean, some do still, but there's a lot of people that really are focused on their wellness and mental and physical wellness. So they're willing to spend a lot of money. So like the whole hospitality market is shifting and there's numbers are really alarming in a good way that, the money is shifting to the hospitality front at alarming rates from a wellness perspective and what they're spending on it. So if you can get on a track that focuses on things that AI can't do, I think there's opportunity. I think that's the track we're trying to run on right now. And I think it's been somewhat helpful because we're producing things that I don't think AI can and won't be for a long time.
As you're talking there, I get the sense of like you are designing around the human experience or like creating environments for people to have human experiences that are going to be meaningful to them, that are meaningful to you and, your company, but meaningful to other people. And AI is never going to really understand what that is, right? They can draw up and render a whole bunch of stuff, but you're the design aspect of like, hey, it's got to be an environment that experiences can occur, such as the ones you want to facilitate. So that's where the aha moment, as I was talking, and be like, that's what you bring to the formula is knowing how people want to, maybe look and feel in an environment. As you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of the sense that I get from, what you're saying.
Well, there's a tactile, that you can be intellectually stimulated by AI and you can be satisfied visually. So it does check off that one sense of intellectual kind of visual stimulation. Or running your hands over a piece of old wood or tile, what you smell, what you hear, all those things are the five senses that architecture, I think, if done right, stimulate. AI can't produce that holistic kind of experience, and it's nothing new. It's something that Americans or humans throughout their course of, generations have always gravitated toward. But when all of your five senses are firing, it subconsciously. And if you have one of those meals or an evening with friends or family, it sticks in your brain and doesn't ever leave. When people live in our homes or experience some of our architecture and they say that was just one of the best nights of the year, it's because all five senses are firing. And I think that's the magic of a well-built design space.
Yeah, makes sense. As we start to look forward to, what's coming down the pipeline here, what does success look like for you guys the rest of the year in regards to growth?
We have a lot of projects that we're working on, a lot of big projects. So we're just trying to keep the doors on the barn per se. So we're not chasing any more work. We got plenty. We just want the work that we're doing to be high quality and deliver in a thoughtful manner. So we're not looking to grow. We're hoping that our work will speak for itself. And we got some booming projects that are really exciting right now. We're doing this project in Kentucky that our clients are buying an old Kentucky horse farm where Kentucky Derby winners come out of, and it's got the water quality of Kentucky. It's got the basketball. We're going to have an old Hoosiers gym inside of this old barn. It's got the whiskey front. It's got hospitality play. It's got a wellness play. It's got all these kind of historical plays. So it's one of these keynote projects that we're really excited about because it kind of brings together a life's worth of work and thinking about space and history and horses and outdoors and cool old barns and basketball, whiskey. So that's it.
Yeah.
That
sounds really cool.
Yeah, we're excited. It's outside of Louisville. It's the property that was formerly owned by a well-known whiskey family that's selling a farm to our clients, which is exciting.
That is exciting. So with all of that pipeline and all these exciting projects, what are some of the biggest bottlenecks? You mentioned earlier, like kind of some of the trends, but what's the bottlenecks that get in the way of like really being able to like see your vision and the client's vision go all the way through?
I would say one of the biggest bottlenecks currently is the permitting and, water quality and what these local jurisdictions, because there's no check to their power. There's a lot of political strings and it's very hard to get permitting with all the different regulations. So the permitting is one. Financing is obviously big because the cost of money is going up, and to secure financing at good terms is a big bottleneck. I would say those are 1 and 2. But permitting is
Gotcha.
kind of people overlook, and it's given that we've worked in 20 towns or 20 states, it's just these developers have to carry risk profiles for years sometimes, which is a lot on big projects.
Do you think AI is going to be able to help that in the coming years, whether to like speed up those timelines or the reporting or the accuracy and just kind of make the bureaucracy run a little smoother? Or do you see any hope there?
No, not on AI front. Political wins, these local mayors and town council members just give a lot of power. They have a lot of power to say no to projects and listen to neighbors and stuff. So I think the market's got to demand more from their local governments to be accountable and not derail big projects because of, sand in the shoes kind of issues, in my opinion. Because, there's a lot of bad projects out there and developers should have a bad name on some respects, but there's also a lot of developers doing some really exciting stuff and using, a lot of their own capital to do innovative stuff. And that there should be some energy and open sourceness that allow people to be creative and bring real value, economic value to communities. So there needs to be a balance there, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Tell us about Lost Whiskey. How does a sustainable architectural firm end up launching a whiskey lifestyle brand? What ties them together for you?
Well, every Christmas we'd have a big bourbon exchange for all our employees. And we thought, geez, if we're going to give each other bourbon, it might as well start our own company. So part of it was tongue in cheek and we all love bourbon, but, we put so much into our service, and that is our architectural design service and build that it's a service business at the end of the day. So we're only as good as our next project or our projects in the past. So it's a service business, which is good in some respects, but it's not a commodity. So we want to develop a commodity that would kind of be a reflection of our values in architecture, which is campfires and storytelling and marination over good friends and family. And so Lost Whiskey has a little leather brand on it, and you save the leather band, it becomes a bracelet. You always remember where you had that whiskey bottle and who you had it with, and it's special numbered. So our brand is all about where and who you share it with. And the lifestyle brand kind of ties in a weird way to what we've been doing our whole life. And that is trying to create this art of gathering in a meaningful way. And whiskey is certainly an elixir to good gatherings if consumed properly.
Yeah. All right. I love it. Great. So for developers or investors, maybe project owners listening today, what does working with GreenSpur look like, and where are the best place for them to get a hold of you if they want to continue the conversations?
Yeah, we'd love to. I mean, we turned down a lot of work because it doesn't fit our profile. And we're not that big of a firm, so we're selective, and we love unique stories. And people have got some crazy ones out there. We like the crazy train. We like projects that are challenging, but the developer has a different vision and wants a different architect to kind of be along for that ride. So we love the unique projects. They can find us at greenspur.net as our architecture firm, and then lostwhiskey.com as our whiskey company. And both are on Instagram, GreenSpur and Lost Whiskey Distillery. So those are the two best places to kind of learn about us. And if you want to reach out to us or direct message us, we're not a very big firm, so you don't have to go through a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, to our audience, if you joined the conversation as much as I have, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I'll make sure to put those Mark's details in the show notes so it's easy to find. Mark, I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast, sharing your story. And I want to thank the audience for being here. This wraps up another episode of Blue Ocean Solutions Podcast. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.